Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations, where we share experiences from our hearts to empower others. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Interstellar Cosmic Conversations. Today, we have our returning guest, Michael Harrell, creator of Language Lessons of the Heart. We're doing part two of our discussion on what it means to be a natural man and a natural woman. And what that really means is, just peeling off the masks that we all wear and getting back to who we are authentically and organically. And I just wanted to read this again. I did this in the last discussion that we had. But for those that are hearing this for the first time, I just want to share what Michael has written about what Language Lessons of the Heart is. So I am going to go ahead and do this. The focus being on the end of pain and the return to loving life. I cannot say enough about emotional release as a practice. Nothing makes your subconscious conscious like emotional release. Nothing shifts your powerlessness to personal power like emotional release. Nothing heals our deepest wounds like emotional release. Do this, and not only will you get huge amounts of your memory back, but you connect to every living thing that has ever suffered, a true compassionate connection to all beings. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome. Welcome, everybody. I'm having a good time. What a great introduction, because today I'm going to talk about emotion release and judgment denial release. Last time we did this, I talked about talking to the parts of self and the empowerment process. The empowerment process goes, I'm empowering myself with a strong and loving intent to heal my will. Will you help me? And what that does, and you say it over and over again, you create a style of saying it over and over again, 10,000 times or something like that. And what's important about that is we have had negative programming of you're not good enough, shut up, be quiet, sit down, you're not behaving right, stop acting, all this stuff that we got when we were a child. And then what happens is all this loaded up stuff of our conditioning that we got as a child created pain body, a bad self-image, or afraid to talk, or afraid to speak in public, or afraid to try new things, right? That's your pain body. But and then if you have a pain body and you don't have a healing body. So what Language Lessons of the Heart does is they do the empowerments. I'm empowering myself with a strong and loving intent to heal my will. Will you help me? And if you do that, say 10,000 times over, a few months, then what happens is that begins to build a healing body. And you want your healing body to be stronger than your pain body. You may not even know all it. Like Paul was talking about. Paul was talking about there's stuff that he needs to heal, and but he hasn't got a grip on it yet. So there's stuff that we need to heal, and we may not have the power, the knowledge, or the understanding to reach that yet. So the first thing I wanted to talk about, so if you do your empowerments, you're going to build, instead of having a big pain body that you have no way of working with, you start to build a healing body so that everything becomes on your radar as a healing event instead of a wounding event. So that was covers last week, last time we talked. So, but today, I want to talk about the first thing to kick it off is the difference between information and process. And like I was saying, information, we get loaded and loaded and loaded in information. Information forms your pain body. It forms your life. It forms the way that you walk, the way that you talk, the way that you think, the way that you feel. Yeah. And so we rely on information like it's something, right? but there's information and then there's process. When something goes wrong or something, or you want to do something, you want to get something or do something, you need a process to do it. You know, to start a business, there's a process to do that. You know, you make a business plan and get your money together and all that kind of stuff. There's a process. So process is what gets the job done. And what we get from the media, you all know about media, is nothing but information that you cannot process. You cannot process global warming. You cannot process the war. You cannot process, you can't do anything about the economy. So and that becomes part of our internal junk, right? That we have loaded up with information with no process, none, right? So you can't do anything about the economy. You can't do anything about your bad relationship. You can't do anything about your kids on drugs. You see, there's this whole thing, or your diet or your health and all this kind of stuff. So process is really, really important. And that's what we're going to talk about today is, you know, this thing about being a natural man and a natural woman. Well, to be free of the information accumulation like barnacles on a hull, that's what it is to be natural. You know, to have that free flowing water of life without the limitations, the guilt, the shame, the suffering, the repeating patterns that you don't like. And that not liking them becomes part of the repeating pattern. So you end up liking not to like, you know, that you're not getting a good relationship, or you're not having fun, or you're not having a spiritual experience, or whatever it is. So that's why I'm going to talk about process today. So to be a natural man or a natural woman means to remove all those things that are unnatural, the conditioning, the beliefs, the judgments, the shame, the guilt. Remove that stuff. How do you remove that stuff? It's like part of your fabric. If you're feeling depressed or whatever, you're going to walk with depression. You're going to speak with depression. You're going to not eat very well because depressed people don't eat. You see what I'm saying? So it just gets into the fabric of your being, and that's not natural. That's not the natural man or the natural woman. So that's information, and that's the pain body versus the healing body. And so the first little bit of information that you need is that you have a pain body. And what the pain body is the conditionings, right? The pain body is two things, okay? It is the feeling of not being good enough, or being guilty, or being afraid, or being depressed. That's the feeling side. So you got the feeling, and I call that the snake bite. Okay, something bad happened to you. You were raped, abused, bullied. Something happened to you, and that pain, right, had those little steps that came to it, and then there's steps afterwards that created it as a loop. So now it's part of a pattern, the pain. But what keeps the pain going is your thoughts. So you have the snake bite is the pain, yeah, and the snake is the thoughts that maintain the pain into a pattern that repeats and repeats and repeats. The snake, ouch. Then the pattern is, I'm not good enough, life's not worth living, and everything I do doesn't work out. That's the words that are being spoken, see? And the words keep the pain alive. Believe it or not. Oh, you want to say something?
I do, because that's really important what you just said. I've shared this before, and that was key when you were saying that the thought loop keeps the pain alive. And this is why something that I've learned in my own life, and I knew that this was a lie that was being told to us about forgiveness, because it wasn't working for me. When we were told, well, write someone a letter and tell them how you feel. And when you do that, that will help you to forgive them. You can go ahead and put this out there, and maybe you won't have the opportunity to hear from them, or maybe you just go to that person and tell them how you're feeling. And when they hear it and they respond to you and they say that they're sorry, maybe that will heal you. And I've actually put those into practice, and I realized that when something hurt me deeply, it might feel good to have the acknowledgement from another person that, yeah, I am aware that I caused you pain, or it might make you feel good to communicate sometimes what you felt, but it's still, if that thought loop is still going in your head, it doesn't matter if someone acknowledges it, and it doesn't matter if what you say verbally. So that's one of the things that I feel like would be so helpful in explaining and helping us to understand in this process is when someone says, I'll forgive you, but I'll never forget, we're really not forgiving. We're really telling you that it hurt me so deeply that I can't forget it, but I'm going to try my best to move forward and continue this relationship with you because I do have a connection to you. I do want to continue in this relationship. But in the back of my head, I'm always waiting for the hammer to fall because the trust has been broken and that wound is there. So what do we do uh, with that? Because that forgive and forget, that's really dishonest. That's a lie I feel like we're telling ourselves.
That's a lie. To forgive and forget. Uh, the whole thing's backwards. Everybody wants you to forgive them,
Hmm.
right? But remember, the wounding happened, and then it was maintained. So somebody insulted you or something a couple of days ago, and now you have resentment and you're hurt, and you don't want to face that person, right? But that's several days ago because your mind's going over it. It's like she said this or he said that, right? And then but we don't see that we have like justifiable rage, justifiable anger of that person who hurt me, right? And so then that becomes that becomes the maintenance of the pain. And every time you look at that person, you have that thing. Oh, that's that person. She's a bitch, or he's an asshole, or whatever. And I hate them, or they hurt me, or whatever. And then you say, well, I'm tired of carrying that shit around. I want to forgive them, but that doesn't really work. I mean, forgiveness never really works. So here's what you have to do. You have to turn it inside and forgive yourself. Yeah. When you forgive yourself, and what are you forgiving yourself for? And I'll give you an example. If you get stung by a bee, right? You don't go around for 3 weeks later going, I got stung by a bee, I got stung by a bee, I got stung by a bee. Yeah? Because the bee stings, and that's what they do, right? So it's like bee stings, and you might tell somebody about that a little while later. But when the pain is gone, then you forget about it, right? But that's not the way we treat people. Because people would say we have this preconceived idea that people are supposed to be kind and nurturing and respectful and all this kind of stuff. And when they're not kind and nurturing and respectful, so we have a projection on them. When they're not kind and respectful, they sting us. Then we're really hurt. Oh, that person stung me, and that person did this, and that's not right. And I was, all this kind of other stuff comes up, right? So really, you forgive yourself. You forgive yourself for letting that person get to you. You forgive yourself for being triggered. You forgive yourself for being vulnerable. You forgive yourself for not seeing it coming. You see what I'm saying? When you really forgive yourself, then what you're doing with the snake and the snake bite is when you forgive the snake, then the snake bite goes away. And when the snake and the snake bite goes away, and there's nothing left, then there's nothing left to forgive the person with. If there's something to forgive the person with, it's because you have energy inside of you that's pain or anger or fear, right? You have energy inside of you that's still being looped around, and that you have to take it to the inside and release that energy. Now you might have to do emotion release, scream and yell and shout a little bit to blow it out. It's like, I hate this feeling, right? But then forgive yourself for being in that situation. Forgive yourself for letting your inner child be wounded, or forgive yourself for having your heart open too much. You know what I mean? And this is you taking care of you. And when you do this enough, this is exactly what Ho'oponopono is that self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, self-apologies, and to say, I love you and I'm going to take care of you. Yeah. And as soon as the energy is clear inside you, there is no reason to forgive anybody for anything, and you're healed. So that's one process right there. So let's start at the beginning. I want to share a little video of Dr. Bruce Lipton. And I'm going to walk you through how consciousness works, and how the process we get wounded, and the process of how we can get healed.
The atom is made out of energy. If you look inside the atom, there's nothing physical in there. It's basically little nano tornadoes of force fields. So there's nothing physical in an atom. And you go, wait a minute. Wait, let me get this right. Your atom is not physical. I go, yeah. But don't atoms make molecules? And I go, yeah. But then molecules, the big combinations of atoms, then they're made out of energy too. Yeah, I go, yeah, that's right. I say, but molecules make cells. Yeah, that's true. So cells are actually made out of energy. I go, yeah, and cells make us. And what you're looking at are energy beings. It's only the trick of the light that you actually physically see yourself, because it's only the light reflecting off of the energy.
Okay, that was short and sweet. Everybody get that?
Mm-hmm. That
means we're going from the natural human man and the natural human woman, and we're going to the woundedness and how we become wounded. But in order to understand that, we have to go back. I have to go back to the fact that we're actually energy. So then how do you deal with the energy? And this whole thing that I described about the snake bite is energy. And you feel it, and the feeling of that energy, of that discordant energy of whatever happened, the trauma and the drama, the feeling of that is the pain, the suffering, the anxiety, whatever it is. And what keeps that going is your mind. Subconsciously, just like you have the habit of walking. Well, your mind has the habit of making you feel bad because it thinks there's something valuable about that. Stay away from this woman, or you have to change your behavior in order to not go to your room with a spanking. You see what I'm saying? So your mind keeps this, it's sort of like a self-protection mechanism, and it does not know a good pattern from the bad pattern. It just repeats the patterns that are imprinted on you. Mm. So that's what I'm going to, but here we are. We're not physical. It's the energy of our consciousness that affects our DNA, that affects the feelings, that affects the hormones, that affects the biology, that makes us feel good or bad or happy or sad, excited, having fun. All that stuff is consciousness, responding, feeling the energy. Yes, and you can increase your consciousness, you can increase the energy, and then you have different feelings. So to go back, so here's the two things that I'm going to talk about today are emotion release and judgment and denial release. And you can see what last time we had this meeting, we talked about the empowerments and talking to parts of self. But the real nuts and bolts of language lessons of the heart, real nuts and bolts of the process is emotion release and judgment and denial release. So before I talk about that, I want to show you another video because this is just fantastic. I'm going to show you another video by Penny Kelly. And this is a little bit longer video, and it comes in two parts. I'm going to stop it, and we're going to talk about what she's saying. This is Penny Kelly. She's going to start talking about about seeds and what happens when you dump large amounts of energy, put stress under a system, put extra energy or stressful energy into an organism, and what happens to it.
As far as the instructions for the classroom and application received, the question that I'm sure will come up at some point in the conversation is, what is the difference between that and GMO? Oh, big difference. Okay, but I mean, they would say, well, does that modify the genetic composition of plants? So I'd be curious. No, it modifies the energetic configuration of a seed, which is a living system. One of the things, this is a piece that Lefty figured out before I came along. He had, remember that thing I showed you that he had some seeds in? And he turned it up and said to Ed, put your hands on this. He was experimenting with that, and he was zapping seeds with these ion electron avalanches to see what would happen. And he discovered, after he zapped them and put them in the germination chamber, that nothing happened. So he was like, well, those seeds are no good. So he put them on, somewhere else in the lab. And a couple months later, he was getting ready to clean. And he was going to throw those seeds away. The same little voice, don't throw those seeds away, said, twice, don't throw those seeds away. So he puts the seeds in germination paper, germinates them, and they grew like gangbusters. So he was like, I tested these right after we zapped them. What was the problem? So he eventually, long story short, figured out what has to happen. When you energize, when you hit a living system with a phenomenally powerful kind of energy, the little seed is a living system, okay? And it knows that it's been hit with something that could be very destructive. So it puts all of its time and all of its attention into producing a tremendous increase in antioxidant capacity within that seed system. It takes it roughly 4 to 6 weeks to do that. At the end of that 4 to 6 weeks, if you plant that seed, it overcomes every barrier in that field that you can think of. And he was realizing at that point there's an adjustment period. People have to be willing to go through an adjustment period, whether it's a seed or a person or a tree, or the tree may lose all of its branches. If people, cut it down too quick, they'll never, the tree won't be there to see the next year that it has twice as many blossoms and twice as many leaves. So an energy change is not a change in GMO. It's literally, GMO is when you add, DNA particles that are not natural for that system. What this energy does is turn on. All DNA works by energy frequency. It's like playing a piano. You play that tune, that piece of DNA comes on. You play that tune, that piece of DNA comes on. So when you hit it with this energy, that new sequence of capacities becomes functional. So, that makes sense?
From your perspective.
Okay, did everybody kind of get that? Yeah? What she's saying is they did this experiment, right? Where they took electrons and beamed electrons into the seeds. And this stressed out the seeds. And then they tried planting them, and it didn't, and nothing happened. It was kind of a failure. Well, then they left them sit for like about 6 weeks. And then the seeds built up power, they built up their energy body, and they built up their antioxidants. So then the seed goes out 6 weeks later or a couple months later, and they planted them, and those seeds put out more fruit. They were resistant to bugs, they were resistant to disease, they were resistant to everything, okay? So, and this is what emotional release does to us. When we get wounded and hurt and crushed and raped and murdered and beaten up, and the mountain falls on us as children, and then we carry that until our adulthood. At some point when you go to heal, right, we've been told, shut up, sit down, be quiet, the children are to be seen and not heard, don't talk back to your spouse, have respect for elders, all this stuff that we got. And then we're sitting on a big load of pain, and that makes us not flourish. We are in that not flourishing, not maximizing, not putting out that big fruit of life, right? So this is one of the things that we're talking about here is emotional release work. So when you do emotion release work, see, when we get wounded, it happens like this. Pop, 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 pop. It happens like that. Snap, 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 snap. Done. It happens to you so automatically you don't even know that you're wounded. It just happens to you as a child, and then you figure it out that something's not right. When you're 18, 30, whatever. Okay. And here's how it happens. We get wounded automatically, subconsciously, non-verbally, and invisibly. Oh. These little realizations hit, and they form the snake. Yeah, the steps of what conclusions you made, of the pain, the shock of you not being accepted, the shock of not being yourself, the shock of not being loved, or shock of being punished or whatever, and then you start making the mind takes over, and then you stay wounded. That's your wounded inner child. Now, what happens when you do emotional release work? This is really important because the pattern of the energy and the pain and the pattern of the thoughts, it's all subconscious. Yeah, it's going to, like, you don't think about walking. I don't think about talking. This is all subconscious, automatic stuff. But when we go to heal now, to that process of healing, you have to make the subconscious conscious. You have to make what was invisible visible. You have to make what was not without words. You have to turn it into words. And then what was invisible, you have to make it visible. And what happens is, if you do emotional release work, screaming, yelling, angry, shout, or grieving, sad, and you do these intentional emotional release sessions, right? What that does is it puts you mildly back into the same kind of a shock, and it takes it out of the subconscious and makes it conscious. You begin to remember the exact event, and you see who said what, and so you can see the person, your mom, your dad, somebody who abused you, ex-wife or whatever. You can see the person, and you can hear the words. You see, and now it's all available for you to process. And this is what happens with emotional release work, and why it's so profound. Then, if you remember what Penny Kelly was talking about, how it invigorates and makes defenses. This is you, and as a child you didn't have any defenses, but when you do emotional release, it builds up your defensive mechanisms. So you can let things roll off your back because you're much stronger, much more centered, much more sensitive, much more powerful. You move in your rage, you get this power back. And with the power and the pain, and when the pain goes and your power back, you get your memory back. So there's a lot going on with the emotional release, which is really, emotional release is about the pain body. It's about the snake bite. And you feel the snake bite. And when you scream and shout and do primal release and moan and all that kind of stuff, that is you're actually building the antibodies to that kind of abuse. You're building your healing body. So that's really, really important. And if you don't know this, see, look, animals cry, babies cry, anything that gets hurt cries. That's the natural call to action. But we have been told, shut up, don't cry. Just quit making noise, you bother me. It's like, I'll give you something to cry about. You see what I'm saying? We get all that kind of stuff, and we repress. And when we repress, then the pain keeps going, and the snake keeps biting, and then it becomes, I'm afraid to start a new job. I'm afraid to ask for a raise. Like, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm not handsome enough. I'm not educated enough. I'm not qualified. You see, all that kind of stuff. I'm not allowed love. Everything that I try to do doesn't work out. All these conclusions become the operating system of your life, and none of them are true. Because remember, what we are is energy bodies first, and then we're physical bodies.
I think this would be a great, after you share this, if somebody wants to share anything that they're feeling when you're expressing this. Yeah. Because when you were saying that, one of the things that came to my mind before we started recording, we were talking about what it means to be natural man, what it means to be natural woman. And it was really just about being able to communicate truth from your heart. And I was saying, you know, I've been a liar, I've been a cheater, and why have I been these things? One of the reasons that we lie is because we are not able to be authentic in fear of being judged or in fear of hurting someone's feelings. So we judge ourselves. We're looking at what someone's going to think about what we say when we express our truths. And so it starts turning us into something that we're not already by our own doing, our own fear, and the way that we look at ourselves and the way that we judge ourselves so harshly. So, and then when you were talking about, you know, sharing emotions, like we get spanked and then we're told not to cry. Well, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and I can't remember who, but you know, one of the things that happens to you when you're a child is our parents are parenting the way that they were taught to parent, or what they think is the best for us. So there's many times that your parents are spanking you, and when they're spanking you, they're telling you, you know, not to cry, or they'll give you something to cry about. So you're getting spanked and your natural reaction is to cry because it's pain. But they're telling you basically they don't want you to cry. They want you to endure the pain. Then you stop crying, you shut down, you don't cry anymore. And then they're looking at you like you're some kind of freak, like, why aren't you crying? I'm spanking you. It's so confusing because you don't know what to do with your emotions at that point. So everything starts to be bottled up inside of you. And you just start becoming, you know, we're already role playing and acting for one another in this creation here where we're co-created. But then we've got this another layer of our characters that are being brought out in us, to where you were talking about, I think in the past conversation, about us having like the multiple personalities that start to emerge because we don't know who to be. So you're one person for your mother, you're another person for your father, your lover, your children, and by the time you're done, there's no Patricia anymore. It's just a different version of who I am for each person that I'm having a relationship with, and none of them are really me.
That's right. And the one point I really want to stress about what you just said, which was really beautiful, is all this stuff that happens to you gets done by people who's supposed to love you. So, you know, home is where the heart is, and whatever happens at home, that's love. But you didn't feel love, so we get pain and abuse and power struggle mixed in with love. So then we go out and try to find love, and it's a pain. It's, you know, if you find somebody who will treat you badly, or you find somebody that you can treat badly, and then your relationships, you try to reproduce this relationship that you had with your parents of abuse and shut down and all this kind of stuff. So men come into a relationship and they're shut down. They don't even want to talk, and women want to talk. And you see, the whole thing is completely the worst start on life that you can have. You know what I mean? So you don't know what love is, because only thing ever you got was denial. You know, here, I hit you for your own good. I'll teach you how to live in this world for your own good. And so you think that if that's for my own good, then I have to repress myself, or I'll have to stifle myself, or I'll have to feel guilty, or I'll have to feel ashamed. And that's love. That's not love. That's people don't know how to love themselves. You ask somebody to love themselves, and they won't actually know how to do it, because all they've ever gotten was suppression and guilt and shame. That's not love. You know what I mean? That's not love. But anyway.
Yeah, and that's something I think this was kind of floating around Facebook, and we saw several people share it on their Facebook wall, and it really resonated with me, and so I shared it too. And it's love didn't hurt you. Someone who doesn't know how to love hurt you. So don't confuse the two.
That's right. And love is one of those things that and here it is. It's the saying goes, hurt people hurt people. That's how you get hurt. So your mom and dad were hurt. They're frantic. They got trying to pay the bills, and they, you know, and they have a couple of kids running around, and they're overwhelmed, and they're trying to do the best they can, but then they never take care of their wounds, and then they just transfer their wounds. You know, this spare the rod and spoil the child has been going on from the Puritans. You know what I mean? Where people beat their kids into submission, And then once they're in submission, then they're okay. And that's how society is built. But none of that stuff is real. None of that stuff is authentic. And it carries over into your adult life. And this is why we have shadows, because it's the shadow of the past that's keeping the sunlight of your possibilities from manifesting forth. And remember, and I wanted to show this thing about the your energy field is these things that I was talking about. If you can see over here on the left-hand side, where like a sick person or emotionally abused person, they'll have like little dents in here where the energy gets knotted up, and those dents are the patterns of discord, the patterns of your wound. Yeah, and a normal person's got this kind of glowing. And I'll have another sample of that right here.
Is there a normal person?
Yeah, there is. But they're kind of rare, actually. You see here, this is all that discord of being told 56,000 times, and all your shame and all your guilt and all your regrets and all your sorrows and all your limitations and all your beliefs and all your angers and all your frustrations, all that stuff, which none of it is yours. None of it is yours, keeps you from thriving and being in your what you would call factory specs. Like an animal doesn't carry around all these things. Animals may be afraid of a wolf or something, but pretty much they're just an animal. They're just the way they are. Horses, the way they are horses, unless you treat them badly. So let's go back. So all that stuff. Remember that one of the processes is to do emotional release work, and then let me show you. Let's go on with Penny Kelly, because this is where she's going to start getting real good here.
Could you define what consciousness is?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. Okay, let's talk about a theory of consciousness, okay? Which is something that I developed so that we can talk about consciousness. If you don't have a common language, a scientist, in the world of science, everybody knows what certain words mean, okay? And so we have this thing called mind, and we have this thing called space, okay? Edgar Casey said, mind is the builder, and that was my first what? Etc. Long story short, and you can read about it in the book if you want to get volume 2. Mind is the awareness property of space. Space is the location aspect of mind. When you have a full-blown Kundalini experience and you go into that space called the void, and all that's there is this awareness called I am. That's your basic ground of being. There's no movement there, there's no sound there, there's no motion there, there's nothing there. There's this incredibly blissful I am consciousness, or I am awareness. If consciousness moves, awareness does not move. Awareness just is. And when you go into that place of consciousness, of awareness, the I am awareness, you are in a state of orgasmic bliss in which you cannot move. You're just frozen in that bliss. It's not something you want to leave either. And you don't have any self. There's no history, there's no plants, there's no animals, there's no worlds, there's nothing there except this amazing, powerful I am. That's all that's there. And that, my friends, is the basis of everybody's existence. That is a billion little tiny particles, pinpoints of light that all hold nothing except that consciousness, or that awareness, excuse me. So, and right there, that's a perfect example of the problem that we have. Some people talk about consciousness, some people talk about mind, some people talk about awareness, Some people talk about some other thing. We got to start somewhere. So mind is and this was dictated to me by this stuff itself, okay? Mind is the awareness property of space, and space is the location aspect of mind, and that's perfectly quiet and still. Now, if that stuff begins to move, what we have is an increase in energy. It changes state and is raised to a higher state. And mind transforms to become consciousness, and space becomes energy. Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy. Energy is the motion of consciousness. It's two sides of one coin. Energy and consciousness are one unit with two aspects. And that's your first step into what I'm going to call the possibility of a world.
Could you say that again? Mind is the something.
Mind is the awareness property of space. And space is the location aspect of mind. Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy. And let me tell you, all energy feels. And energy is the motion of consciousness. The motion. So if you have a powerful consciousness, you're going to get more energy. You're going to have more energy. You're going to have a bigger energetic effect. Okay? And this is consistent with the science as well. So now the third stage of development is you've got this incredible.
Okay, that's really one of the main things I wanted to get across here. Remember when I said Penny was talking about the mind is the builder. So you're talking about that from the void, the mind is what starts things moving. Yeah. So mind's the builder, and the mind is the awareness of the I am. Now, I'm talking about 5D stuff. This is before you have any physicality, but it applies to us where we are now. So mind is the awareness, the I am property of space. Mind is the awareness of space, and space is the location aspect of the mind. Consciousness moves and awareness doesn't move, okay? And when the mind begins to move, it increases in energy, and the energy changes state. Mind transforms into consciousness, and space transforms into energy, okay? And we're still talking about the pain body and the energy that's stuck in your pain body in a loop, and it's held and maintained by the mind. Is really important. And then she talks.
So you're saying that, because I want to be clear on this, because a lot of people here are very aware of our heart consciousness. So I want to make sure that I'm, taking in what you're saying correctly. So you're saying that when we're looking at the pain body and everything, because of it's coming from that mind consciousness, not the heart perspective, not the heart consciousness.
It's just a pattern. It's just a pattern of energy. She goes on later on, talks about that. But
okay,
but yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like when you talk about the parts of the self, you have spirit, heart, will, and body. But it's not usually the heart or the will or the body that causes pain. It's usually the spirit, which is the mind. That something was said to you or done to you, or somebody who wasn't in contact with their heart, which is the awareness of the energy of your heart. They're not aware of that energy, then they can do whatever they want. And then their programs, like being inflicted by a flu, right? So they give you the emotional flu or the emotional blues or the emotional trauma. And it all has to do with energy. They throw in that energy on you, you pick it up and vibrate it as discord and pain, and then you keep that. Then your mind, once you got that discord and pain, it's exactly like when the dog's on the other street, and the dog maybe bit you one time, and then you actually change your whole behavior. You don't go around the block you don't go on that other street because you're afraid of that dog. And we hold ourselves back in the exact same way. I'm never going to say that again to my mother, or I'm never going to do this, or I'm not good enough, or You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So then she said, here, this is one of the things that's so important because this is the only time I've ever heard this in 60 years. Okay, when the energy builds up, it forms a particle, and the energy becomes a particle, and the conscious becomes intelligence. Okay, the thought is the maintenance aspect of the pattern. So that's the snake. Thought is the maintenance aspect of the pattern. If you're wounded when you're 6 and now you're 50 and you're still feeling that childhood abuse, it's because it was maintained by your mind and your subconscious for that long to keep that pain intact as a pattern that messes your life. Or if you failed as a child and then you fail as a relationship and then all your relationships fail and stuff like that. It gets very complicated after that. I'm just trying to keep it really, really basic. Okay, and the thoughts repeats the pattern, and the pattern is the demonstration. The pattern is the demonstration of the thoughts needed to achieve a working model. And all of your behavior patterns are little sections of thought. You know, this is what you look like, manners and mannerism. Okay, and this is what emotional release does. Is one thing that I don't know if we got to there is that when she talks about if you increase your consciousness, so we're here right now gathering information and we're learning about process, and this increases our consciousness. And if you increase your consciousness, you increase your energy. But the opposite is also true. If you increase your energy, you increase your consciousness. And it takes more energy and more consciousness to heal your inner child work. You can't heal your inner child work with the same level of energy that you stayed stuck in. This is why emotional release work is so important, because you're just moving that energy. Remember, she said consciousness is the feeling of energy. Try to understand what this means. Is that all the energy in the universe is a feeling. And we've been denied our feeling. So our psychic abilities, our intuition, our clairvoyance, clairaudience, all this kind of stuff, and our feelings of love and compassion, all that's shut down when we're shut down, when we're in this suppress to survive mode. But the universe speaks in feelings, not in words. And the more feeling you have, so when you're emotional release, you get more feelings, you get more consciousness. And then that more consciousness makes you able to feel more subtle things. And the more subtle things gives you more power, and you get your memory back and all that kind of stuff. Like I was saying in the last time, is I have my memory back that goes all the way back to watching the earth cool down. And my memory goes up to dozens and hundreds of lifetimes. And then going back further than that to when we were emerged we were like just light beings and sort of like what you would call the Godhead. And before that to the first formation of what you would call God, which is this energy that manifested into a consciousness. And even before that to where there was back into the void. These kind of memories, this kind of abilities, this kind of connectedness, you can only get from having your energy higher and then your consciousness higher. And then once you're not suppressing anymore, you're feeling the whole vibrational frequency of what it is that is to be you, then the memories come back. Because all these things, you want to remember your past lives, your abilities, remember being able to go in and out of dimensions and all that kind of stuff. Those are feelings first. And with your emotional body shut down, you kind of screwed the pooch on that. So that means everything's suppressed. Okay, has anybody got any questions or feedback at this point?
Ruby, you've got your hand raised, and I don't know if you just did that earlier and left it there, if you really wanted to say something. No? Okay.
I think that Natalie, you want to, no, you're good? Then who's that? Does Paul want to say something? Go ahead, Paul.
Yes, I wonder, This woman, she is talking a lot about consciousness, but she is also talking about, I wonder if she is mostly talking about the mental consciousness and not the heart consciousness, because she's also talking about Kundalini, which seems to be a kind of a mental rise of energy. So I wondered what your thought was about that.
Well, energy, the whole thing about energy is it comes in patterns, right? And love, let's say, it's absolute, that I am is absolute inclusivity and unconditional love. That's the I am, right? Mm-hmm. So it is inclusive of all the patterns. It's sort of like that's why they usually say the mother, you know, the mother of everything. Is the mother of God, right? So from the void comes everything. So and what she is inclusivity and unconditional love, absolute inclusivity. So whenever you get into, and these are all vibrational frequencies and patterns of energy now. Okay, so the purest form of energy is the love. Yeah. So she's talking science there, and I'm talking consciousness, and I'm talking about healing, but it's the same idea. And when I talk about, we have a spirit energy, a heart energy, a will energy, which is our emotional energy. That's your connection to the great I am. And then you have your physical body energy. Each one of those frequencies is a little bit like light. You can take one light of the I am, right? Or like imagine white light, and you split it up into blue, yellow, green, and red. Yeah. And green would be the heart. Yeah. So it's all the same stuff, really. And because there really is no divisions. And the original source is inclusive of all. Yeah. But you have to feel that. So the beginning of feeling that is to feel when you're in your head, feel when you're in your heart, feel when you're in your emotional body, in your belly, in your power center, or your sexual center, and feel when you're in your body. Yeah. And that's yeah, go ahead.
Me?
No, she won't.
Okay.
She wants to say, go ahead. You have to unmute yourself, Natalie.
I have a question, because people are afraid to feel. That is what I always come across, because I'm also working with people, and they are afraid to feel. And we can make healing processes very, very smooth and easy, but at least they have to accept themselves, and that begins often with pain in the first place. Then it gets less dense after a while, but first mostly it starts with pain, and people totally, by all means of the end, avoid to feel pain, and so they all want just the next shot of drugs or the next booze or sex or whatever it is. How do you convince people that they are safe to open for the pain?
Oh, well, there's a lot of ways you could do it. If you're doing one-on-one, that's one thing. But I have an exercise called Finding Your Lion Heart. And you could call it like an acting exercise. And what I do is you have your left hand, I call fear, that's your fear, and your right hand, you call anger, right? So that you use your imagination. So it's like an acting class. You use your imagination, and you imagine a dog's going to come and bite you, right? And then you allow that fear to come through you. Here again, it's kind of a trick. You say, just pretend. You pretend that the dog, it's like like you're acting, right? So then you use the dog is going to come and bite you, and you go, oh, right, and you scream and you run around, right? And then you say, okay, now imagine you have a big stick and you're going to defend yourself from that dog, and you start getting very angry and you start beating the dog or hurting the dog. You get very angry in a rage to stop the dog from hurting you, okay? Now you do that exercise, the fear and the anger, the fear and the anger, the fear into terror, anger into rage. Yeah, and what happens is these are part of your heart chakra right across here because they're connected to your heart. So instead of being this little tiny person who's afraid of anything, all of a sudden they're starting to feel fear over here, which is part of love, and anger over here is part of love, and you keep expanding that, right?
Yeah.
Then, after you've got this, you've conquered the dragon, you've conquered the snake, or you've conquered whatever was trying to get you, or you protected your family from the wolf pack, whatever that imagination is, you become this very strong person. You have this more energy. Again, you have more energy, and it's the energy of fear for my hurt and angry that I was hurt. Yes, the fear and anger that I was hurt. And then when you have this much bigger energy field, then you can go down into embrace the pain because you're not afraid. You're not afraid. You're a powerful person, and you moved a lot of fear. Then you can embrace your sorrow, your grief, your sadness. You can embrace the woundedness that you've had, the great, great, great pain burden that you have. But you can't really do that directly, because if you do that directly, then people, if you notice, if you do that directly, then people you'll be spending months with them just crying and crying and crying. They don't have the fear and they don't have the rage to balance it all out. Okay, so that's the fear, and then the anger, and then you go down to your pain, your grief and suffering, and then you go back up to sorrow, to gratitude, joy, and happiness. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, I did something. Yes, I protected. Yes, I felt something. You see, and that's the cross. That's what they call dying on the cross. Is you hit those four notes: the fear, the anger, then go down to whatever the pain, the grief, the sorrow, whatever that is down there that's really hurting in your belly, and then you bring all that back up through the heart. All this thing going through the heart, right? Then you bring it back up through the heart, back up to your head, and then you feel that gratitude, you feel that relief, you feel that healing, and you do your happy dance and your gratitude. You see, and that kind of what here again goes back to what Penny Kelly was saying. When you increase the vibration, you increase the consciousness, and when you allow yourself to go under the stress, even if it's a pretend stress, because it's all really pretend anyway. When you go into the pretend stress of pretending that the dog's going to bite you and pretending that you have to beat off the wolf pack or whatever it is, then that gives you like a kind of spiritual immunity. Well, I just faced a pack of imaginary wolves. I could certainly go in and see what it's like to cry as a child. You see what I'm saying? You have that spiritual immunity now, yeah, and it's empowering because you saved yourself love, right? You saved yourself from the dog biting you, and you defended yourself from the wolf pack or the dog killing you, and you killed that wolf. But here's what happens: if you do this exercise a bunch of times, as soon as it just goes beyond the dog and it becomes the mom who neglected you, or the dad who judged you. You know what I mean? And then you're having then you're actually doing actual inner child work. You're actually doing shadow work, and you don't even realize that you shifted over from an imaginary thing to a real thing. That's how it works. And it's just the patterns. You move the patterns and you heal.
Thank you for that. Because I recognized very often people that got hurt the most. In the end, they are the really, really strong ones in the end. But the challenging thing is that people take the first steps because they haven't experienced themselves as strong. So they are so afraid to get into the pain. And they have to. I never found something to avoid this. They have to.
They have to.
Yeah.
You have to face your pain. You have to feel it to heal it.
Yeah.
And it's better to feel it with your energy up. Your energy, more energy and more consciousness. And what happens, we have this little energy and little consciousness, and then we're afraid because we become the inner child. We're afraid of saying anything. We're afraid of opening up our voice. We're afraid of trying something new. We're afraid of change because the only way I was survived is to stay exactly the way I am now, all shut down and small. That's how I survived my childhood. So the idea of being big and strong and massive is just, that's associated with the spanking and the shaming and the judging. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a tough road.
Well, you know, and I wanted to say this too. You know, we put forms of protection in place for survival. So when we move out of living in survival, we move into alignment with love. And so what Michael's talking about, where we're practicing this, where we're practicing these feelings, well, in feeling, that's when we start to begin to understand who we are, and we connect to our heart and to the infinite beings that we are. So I'm going to give you a real life example instead of a role playing example, even though even in life we're role playing, but I'm going to take it to this level. So for me, if anyone that knows me knows that I've had a lot of trauma in life, and knows that I've been spending my entire life trying to overcome that trauma, trying to live in empowerment, and always questioning and wanting to know who I am. So that's what my journey's been about. And so it's been riddled with fear, but even in as much fear as I've lived in, I've never felt like a victim. And that's what's always been so contradictory about who I am. I'll push myself, feeling like I'm nobody, feeling like I'm nothing, but at the same time feeling like, well, I feel like I'm nobody, I feel like I'm nothing, but I also feel like I'm this just extremely powerful being. And I could never really wrap my brain around that because it was always in contradiction to one another. But something that's been a truth in my journey in this incarnation is that anytime that I have been in a situation to where I'm alone and I would be maybe walking down the street in an isolated area, I've always been approached with a situation that could be considered life-threatening. From my childhood, it could be a group of boys, it could be an adult child predator, and I have had those situations where I have been, the child that was preyed upon, to the point that I could not walk around the block by myself because I've lived in fear that I would be abducted or harmed. And it took me until I'm 51, and it took me until I was 51 to be able to just go to a park and do a walk in nature. I absolutely couldn't be in nature, the thing that I love the most, by myself, out of fear that in my isolation, I couldn't trust myself. I couldn't trust Mother Earth. I couldn't trust anyone, that I would be safe in that environment, because the memory and the fear is always something that was playing in my head, that if I do this, I'm going to end up running from someone or something because there's 99.9% chance that I'm getting chased, and I'm going to be running, ducking, rolling, doing whatever I've got to do to get to safety. That's been my reality. And so I put myself in a situation when I was 51 that I went through this park where I had to choose these trails to walk on. So this was the same thing as, putting my hand out for the dog to bite me. Okay, so I'm faced with these, I get to these trails, and I've got like 4 trails I'm looking at, and I can't just do what a normal person does and just walk down a trail. I've got 4 paths here. Which one's going to be the safest? Like, if someone comes after me, what's the safest one that's going to get me back to a group of people where I can go, help me. So that's my thought process in walking this trail. So I choose the one. I see this young guy walking by, and I know he's harmless. I feel his energy, but I'm still deterred by him. So I choose a different path. That was my first experience. So now I'm really wanting to just go, this was recent, where I was going to go do this walk in an area where I knew that if I wasn't visible, I could be in danger. That still was playing in my head. As sovereign as I am, as much healing work as I've done, knowing that I'm infinite, and that I'm a creator, and that everything that's happening is happening for my soul's journey, for everything that I need to learn about who I am and what I want to experience in this incarnation. And I'm still walking this path with fear. And I'm like, come on, I've got to do this. And so as I'm walking, I'm looking at my environment. I'm thinking, okay, so what if somebody, harasses me? I can deal with that. I'll be fine. I can do this. And I trusted myself on this walk, but as I was walking, I got to this one area and it was very secluded. And I was like, I don't know if I started to get this very uncomfortable feeling. And when I got this uncomfortable feeling, I was coming upon this wooded area, and it was a dead end street. And I knew that I could easily have an uncomfortable situation take place and I wouldn't have anywhere to go. And so I thought, is this a rational concern? Is this really something that I should be afraid of? Or is there a real danger here? Is there something that's potentially going to harm me? And I just trusted my intuition in that moment. And I turned around and went in a different direction. And in that moment, because I realized there was a couple of things that were happening in this situation. One, I didn't let my fear stop me from taking this walk. So I did go on the walk, but I was also very aware of my circumstances and thought, still use your intuition and your inner knowing to know if there is a threat and respond to that threat. And so as I had turned around, there was nothing that in my visual that would have made me other than just this wooded area that should make me feel this fear. Like, okay, I feel like I'm being pinned in this corner and something could happen. But I turn and come back, and as I'm halfway back, I see this vehicle come. And when it came, it was this group of workers that were coming to this dead-end road. Now, what was interesting to me about this is a couple of years ago, I'd actually had a confrontation with the group of men that were in this truck. They would ride by my house constantly. And they were just like the cat calling type of things that men do, but it was always really uncomfortable, and they would make me feel uncomfortable anytime I was in my yard. So what really was happening is that energy, there was no real harm, but what I was connecting to was this uncomfortable energy that I had experienced with this group. They're landscapers, and they're in my neighborhood quite a bit, but I hadn't seen them in a long time, but I still felt that energy. And it was going to be an uncomfortable situation. So I had turned and came back out of that secluded area to where maybe it would have given them more liberty or freedom to do something that they wouldn't have done on a main street in public. And but my intuition allowed me to turn around, and there was no panic or no I couldn't trust myself. It was actually very empowering to say, hey, this is something that a 51-year-old woman ought to be able to do. She ought to be able to walk down the street without fear. But when I had that moment of uncomfortableness, that was my inner knowing that this is going to be a situation that I don't want. And I actually was able to put myself in a more comfortable environment. And when we passed one another, it was a completely different dynamic in our relationship. If that makes sense. I know I rambled on that. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, you've been doing some work in the last couple of years, and that's given you some confidence. But here's the thing: you talk about being infinite creators and all this kind of stuff, and we shouldn't be afraid of anything in the whole universe, and yet here you go for a walk and you still feel afraid. So information isn't enough. Just to know that you're a creative being, or you're infinite, immortal, and what was never created. You're these amazing beings. And still, maybe you're afraid to spend money, or you're afraid to walk down the street, or you're afraid to ask for a job, or you're afraid to approach somebody who you like and say, I like you. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So information isn't enough. You got to get into the process of what it takes to actually change. And the process is primarily in 5D. It's inside you. So if you had done the Finding the Lion Heart exercise, then that gives you a lot of power and a lot of success. Each time you do the exercise, it gives you a success at overcoming your fear and having power and feeling your pain and embracing all that stuff and neutralizing all that, and it gives you a whole different life. I tell you, it's nothing happens when you do emotional healing work because what happens is all the other stuff that you think you are just drops away, and you get back into factory spec. So you're not worried about this, you're not worried about that, you're not held back. It's really a nice feeling. You're well on your way, Patricia. Anybody else have something they want to say?
Yes, something I'd like to add. Last week I've been talking to a client, and actually she is also helping people. And she had made so much empowering experiences in her life, and she's able to go on the streets with drunken guys and all of that. She'll never be afraid. But this week, her mom is coming her home. Yeah, and that's it. Cause yeah, you have all these experiences, but still, there is some small kid inside of us, and doesn't matter how much empowering stuff we are doing, doesn't matter how much we know, this experience hasn't changed over all the decades. And so, yeah, we really have to go through the process. She has to have reference experiences where she is standing up as an adult towards her mother. And that is the only solution she will ever find.
And this is where emotional release happens, because when you get out of this, the warm-up exercise of doing, with the dog and the exercise, when you get away from that and you learn to do the process directly, then you have a primal target. And you say to your mother, you had no right to shame me. You had no right to abuse me. And you screaming and you yelling at your mother, because the mother that she's afraid of is not the mother who's walking in the house. The mother that she's afraid of is the mother from her memory. And that's who you move your emotions at. You move your emotions at the mother in your memory, away from your mother. And once all that's gone, then the mother walks in and she's just an old lady that she's an old, sweet old lady. And all that other stuff is gone. You don't have to carry it anymore. So you do your emotional release work at your primal target, away from your primal target. So if it's your husband, you do your emotional release work when he's at work, and then you release all that, whatever the pain and suffering or whatever the stuff is.
Oh, yeah. You mean we can't release it when you mean I can't just like yell at my husband when he's present?
Absolutely not.
Oh, well, I've been doing it wrong then.
Don't do that at all. Don't do that because that's a good way to get yourself killed.
I'm kidding.
If he gets triggered and he decides he wants to raise back, that's how domestic violence happens. And,
No, I'm kidding on that, but there is one. I just remember this one time where my husband's very patient and he accepts everything that's, even if he won't feel it himself and go there, and he might suffer from it physically because of that, but he lets me do my crazy. And there was one day when I couldn't get through to him, and I just did the emotional release. I just stood there and I just screamed like a crazy person. And he just looked at me like, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And I was like, "I feel so much better now. Let's go." And I was just like, I'm good. But, I let it out. It happens.
It happens, yeah, but it's not the best practice to do.
No, it's not.
Because
But I'm being honest.
You're yelling at your husband because of something that happened in his childhood. He's yelling at you because of something that happened in his childhood. And it becomes just a complete mess. And then everybody's feelings get all upset. And so it's never the person, it's always something in your past. It's just the person inside. It is the snake that's biting you, which is the memory of your mother or your father or the one who abused you. Anyway, Paul's been trying to say something for a while, so let's give Paul a chance.
And also Maya too, I think. She wants to. Okay.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to share that I recognize a lot of what has been shared. Also with you, what you said, Patricia, with this experience of, for example, from me taking the tram from my school at home, sometimes I could feel panic fear, and I didn't really know why. Of course, I know now that it's also because I was sensing all these emotions with people, and I didn't know it was not mine. And what I can also say is that now, at this time when we are sharing, what I feel is a kind of a burning inside my body. And if this had been half a year ago or 1 year ago, I would have shut down completely. because it's just so scary. This kind of being on fire in a way, and the deepest fire is inside the belly, but the most painful one is in the heart, as I feel it now, and it goes also up in the throat. So this is kind of visual. I just got it now when we were talking.
Are you have a Kundalini movement?
No, I don't do Kundalini. I don't want to have anything to do with that snake. But
Kundalini does you. You don't do Kundalini. It does you. Naturally, you know, people have spontaneous Kundalini all the time. Did you know?
I know. I have experienced this. It's not that.
Okay.
This is more like the fire of. I'm a fire phoenix in Vedic astrology. It's more like it's the fire of transformation, because I'm kind of I could have this before, this feeling, this sensation, but then I would close down because it was too scary. Now it's like I'm experiencing the fire, and it's not Kundalini. It's more like the fire of yes, it's the fire of transformation.
That's pretty beautiful, and it's good that you're expanded enough and comfortable enough to allow the feelings up. Because when you remember the feeling, the consciousness is the feeling of the energy, and when you feel the energy, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's joy or pain or confusion, whatever it is. When you really feel that energy, your consciousness expands, you evolve, you change, and that's what we're trying to get back to with emotional healing, is get into feeling the authentic feeling that you're actually having. Not I'm afraid. And the reason why you're afraid is that you're hurt. So when you go into the hurt, you're no longer afraid. You see what I'm saying? So to get to the root of it, it's always shadowed or suppressed or whatever. But yeah, and that brings your memories back, and your abilities back, and your sense of self back, your sense of naturalness. When we talk about the natural man and the natural woman, a lot of people feel fake because they have to have these gates and personas and strategies to get along.
Yes. So now I want to. I mean, I couldn't express myself like this before because it was just not possible. Because it would, I probably had a very strong block in my throat. I just couldn't.
Shut down right here.
I was completely shut down.
That's what emotional release. You scream out past you. You use this chakra right here, and this chakra, right, is connected to your heart and to your will, right. So your will, your emotional body is sitting under your heart, and when it comes up through the heart and then out the mouth, that is like the vibration. You change your vibration that way. Bawling like a baby, right, or raging like a lion. When you let it come out through your mouth like that, that changes your vibration and it changes the whole pattern that you're doing. So it's really a good thing to do emotional release work. Anybody else?
I think Maya wants to share now. Thank you, Paul.
Hi, everybody, beautiful beings. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I just wanted to say we are living in such an incredible time. I mean, where healing is happening in such a quantum manner. And I like the phrase you say about the will. I mean, as long as we have the will, I mean, if some of us, I mean, I always knew what I am, who I am since I was very, very, very young. But at the same time, I mean, there was such an amount of trauma, which is really, I mean, could fill a book about that. You know, you have like men in black threatening you, never talk about what you are since you're a baby and stuff like that. So there was always like both things, you know, there was this tremendous fear in the body all my life. And yet right now I feel like, and on the other side, there was this, I mean, you have heard me singing Patricia, so you know, there's this infinite being which has always been there for moments, but I never could hold that space because of all the pain and fear and, I mean, stuff which happened to me in my childhood, all my life. And then you go this repetitive road, and it repeats and it repeats and repeats. But I feel like the last years, I mean, for many of us have been like being pushed in one way or the other. And then, of course, I mean, many of us don't have the money to have a therapy or whatever, so we have to figure it out all on ourselves. But the moment you have the will and ask your, however you want to call it, higher self, your true being, your essence, your spirit, with a will, hey, I mean, like last year, it has been like, poison has been a big theme in my life. So like last year, I got like really, I mean, I got hit with a glyphosate, and then I went visiting California, and there were all these chemicals with all these bacteria. My body crashed, but it was such a beautiful process now looking back. I mean, it was life-threatening situations, but calling spirit, calling this higher me, help me to go through that, and it brings you into situations where spirit guides you really, your spirit guides you to go back to the feelings where you got so bad hurt, or the feelings where you had so much, you just like, you cry these tears, or you feel it, you know. It's just beautiful. I feel it's a beautiful, beautiful time. And, then sometimes you have beautiful people like you out there, and you feel the frequency, you feel the mirror, and just being in the listening, you, Patricia and Michael, and all of you, talk or just emanating. It's a beautiful time. So we can actually really come back to the center.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And that's what you just shared is really important. When you talked about how it turned into be a beautiful time, we have to lose judgment around the sickness that's in our body. We have to lose judgment around when our body is ill, because our body is who we are, and it's always on our side. It's always wanting the best for us. So when our body is sick, and it's showing us that we need to pay attention to it, it's because it wants us to stop and look at what's going on in our life and allow this, like the emotional release. Like, we know that it's the pain body, it's the trauma, it's the things that we're holding in that are making our energy frequency, our cellular bodies not healthy. So it's just your body's way of saying, hey, pay attention, take care of yourself, love yourself. And we cast judgment on that. If we're fat, if we're skinny, if, whatever it is that's going on within our body, and we compare ourselves to other people and what they're experiencing. And we don't need to do that. We need to look at what's going on with us individually and determine, what is my body saying to me? What is it that I need to look at and heal within myself? Because, everything about our being is there to support us. It's just the distortions that make us feel otherwise. So that's what we're connecting to and are remembering, is the whole healthy beings that we already are. So everything that happens to us and in us is all about that remembrance and that empowerment to remembering that we are healthy and whole.
Yeah, and it's beautiful. As long as we have this will and this desire to be who we are, the health is so beautiful. Sometimes you meet a person, or you just one phrase, or you have this aha moment in the middle of washing dishes or whatever. Mm-hmm. So once you activated this will to feel all these emotions, stuck emotion or whatever, it's so beautiful how the universe conspires. Is that the right word? English is not my first language.
Yeah, and then we've been made to feel embarrassed or ashamed, especially men, to be ashamed or embarrassed to feel, because it's like if you cry, if you're emotional, then you're weak. And again, it's like we don't even know how to be a natural woman or a natural man, what that means anymore, because it's so distorted. And now with the way that sex has been just put out there and everything is so over sexualized. We don't have intimacy, we don't have vulnerability, we don't have trust. We've lost it with our parents, we've lost it with our siblings, with our, the people that would be our life partners. So we're all struggling to find a way to be vulnerable and to be able to express that emotion, and to do it without someone laughing at us or taking advantage. And when you open yourself up and you feel and you're vulnerable, what if you do that, and the very thing that you've been terrified to do and you allow yourself to do, and then someone takes advantage and they go right into that wound and they just rip you apart. That's a big fear.
So beautifully said.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, thank you, Patricia. I'm healing my greatest fear. I'm not afraid to sing in front of 1 million people, but talking in public, that has been a big deal.
Yeah, I appreciate this. You've done it a few times now, so that's awesome. Thank you.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Precious.
You're welcome.
Did Peter have something to say, or no, Patrick? You want to say something?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of interesting, this whole conversation. And I'm kind of still reeling from a situation I had, but last week I had a friend call me, and he's been a friend for almost a decade, and he's an older gentleman. And it was a situation where he wanted me to come down to Southern California, and I'm up in Northern California, to watch his dog. And I haven't talked to him that much. We used to be really close, but we kind of drifted apart. And so he called the other day just to kind of firm up plans for the end of this month for me to go down there and watch his animal while he took a motorcycle ride. And it was just a really weird conversation where some things really agitated me. They got me riled, I guess, internally. And he says things that really trigger me. One of them is when somebody says to me, "Listen, I don't want to offend you, but I want to say something to you," and that always gets me offended, because it's like, just say what you're going to say. And so he then went on to talk about his political persuasion and how I need to agree with it. And I said, I really don't want to talk about politics and everything. Anyways, the phone call ended, and I was massively triggered. I was so upset, because what I had to come up against was my own. It was like, on one side, I need to be honest, but on the other side, what if I get rejected? And what if I'm really myself? What if I am who I am, and I just speak honestly? And all day I just was tangled up in knots, basically, because I knew when I made this agreement that I was doing him a favor, but it wasn't going to be pleasant for me. Somebody that we're very much not alike. I think, what I really discovered was the only thing we really have in common is our love for animals. And so I was justifying it in my mind, and I knew that day that I needed to call him back and I need to cancel this. This is something that I don't want to do. And I've never been the type to just come out and say, I don't want to do that. That doesn't resonate with me. And no thanks. I felt like obligated or something. Like I had already made an agreement, and I'm one of those people that I don't break agreement.
Wait a minute, why don't you say it to him right now, because it's in your imagination. So say it to him. Imagine him just like the Gestalt. Imagine him sitting right in front of you. Tell him.
Well, I did. What I did was I just had to call him back and say, John, I'm gonna have to cancel on our my trip coming down there. And he said, oh, what's going on? And my natural approach would have been to say, well, this came up or that came up. And I said, I just don't really like you. It's not that I dislike you. It's that I really just don't feel close to you at all. And I don't want to go down there. I don't want to be a guest in your home when everything you say to me feels antagonistic. And I had to really, it was scary. It was so scary. And, I just had to say, hey, I'm not going to do this, even though you want me to. And it was as if like 100 years of weight came off my back. And it was so amazing because I basically just said, maybe we can be friends and we can communicate. But right now, I see your viewpoint and I understand your viewpoint and I respect your viewpoint, but it's not my viewpoint. Okay? And so I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to be dishonest in order to please people. And I've never done anything wrong where I feel like I owe you something. Okay? I was coming down there out of the kindness of my heart. And it was so amazing I knew this because I kind of played it out in my head how it would go. And I knew that immediately he would first start with, well, is there any way that we can work around this? And then it got into insults. And I said, I can completely understand you. Thanks for sharing that. And I just let it go. I just said, we'll talk in the future. I don't know when, but there's some big changes coming up. And so, be prepared for those. Because right now where your thinking's at, they may surprise you. And it was really one of those things that when I was done, it was like, holy shit, I just did that. And for the rest of the day, I was like, I yanged out. I just yanged out. I did things like a guy, and I felt like, wow, I haven't felt like this
Hey.
for a couple decades. It's been a couple decades since I just was myself, unapologetic. And this is how it's going. Why? I don't need a reason because this is how I choose to be. Mm-hmm. And it was just amazing to go through that and just not have to justify it. Just say, I'm not drawn to do that because I'm not drawn to do it. That's all. And to hear the response from him, well, that's because you're this or that's because you're that. And I went, cool, right on, thanks for sharing, without having the need to get into insulting him or getting tangled up in that. And I got off the phone call and I realized by the end of the day that was kind of like your finding your lion heart, where you really have to swing out of your pendulum. And for me, I've been a pussy for like 20 years, just let life run over me because I didn't want to offend people. And so
nice guy.
It took me most of the day to get back to like modulating that, where being a big old pud's not going to work, but being this really aggressive person doesn't work for me either. Mm-hmm. And so, it was one of the most amazing things just to find my truth and just stand in it and say, I don't want to do this. I'm not going to do this. And you can have your opinions about it, and that's okay. But it was so amazing that the rest that I got that night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I slept so good, and woke up the next morning and I just sat there and cried because I realized how much of myself I don't share with other people, and I hide, or I try and make sure that I'm liked or approved. And I never put two and two together. I never realized, why are people running over me? I'm so nice. I'm so kind and so helpful. Why is everybody running over the top of me? And, and it took that swinging the pendulum, is what I call it, to get back to just understanding that those things, those feelings, those emotions, and being scared is, I always thought they were scary. I was always punished as a child for feeling emotion or feeling any emotion. I was the goof off, so I got punished for that. And then if I cried, I got punished for that. And so it really just amazed me to see myself and realize I don't have to justify my existence any longer. I can just be who I am. And if people don't like it, I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, what are they going to do? Leave my life? I live on the side of a mountain in the forest. Mm-hmm. And so my nearest neighbor is a half mile away. I've pretty much taken care of anybody leaving my life in that sense. So I just wanted to share that. I'm still processing it, but it's kind of amazing that I spent so much of my life being inauthentic. To please people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the damage that it has caused me personally, financially, emotionally, pleasing other people without being honest and just saying, no, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. It was kind of amazing, but get ready, Patricia.
Well, I think that's awesome. Yeah, that is so awesome. But because I was thinking, when you were sharing that, I would expect that to be, a trigger. So when we're triggered, what triggers us is usually bringing attention to one aspect of something that's going on inside of us internally. And so this was one of those times, instead of you internalizing, and you went ahead and you allowed yourself to be authentic and everything came out. And so it didn't trigger you to have a judgment against yourself. Instead, it liberated you, right? So normally that trigger that plays, and you didn't this time because you weren't deceptive. You were completely authentic.
Yes, and it really did open me up to all the different areas where I am dishonest, mm-hmm. Not intentionally, and it's kind of one of those weird things. Is I'll be honest with people, unless I think they're going to reject me, or all those little things. And the most interesting part was, this guy is just like my father. He has the same mannerisms and the same responses. And for the first time in my life, I was able to allow him his viewpoint without that need to defend myself. It was as if I just moved out of the way and it went by. And
there you go. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to. That's what normally that response that he gave you, that would have been your trigger, and that would have been where you would have doubted yourself, because normally you'd be triggered because you weren't even being completely authentic and honest. You were still making up some kind of bullshit story to tell him. And so what he would come back at you with, there'd be a bit of truth in it because you weren't being yourself. So in this situation, there's nothing to trigger.
I'd like to add that congratulations.
Yes.
And when I was started off my talk talking about the pain body, and then you make, over the process of doing your emotional healing work, your shadow work, you make, and doing I'm empowering myself, you make a healing body. And in this situation, your healing body won. It took this scenario and turned it into a healing event. You see? But if you didn't have a strong healing body, then it would have been a repeated pattern of the denied self. So, and I want to let everybody see that in live action, that your healing body in this situation was stronger than your wounded body, than your pain body. And that's really a good thing. And what it did is it made you review and look and say, what else can I do? You know, or look at my past and how can I stay empowered? And that's what you want. That's what you want to do when you do it, to be empowered. You want to have an immaculate intent to heal. You know, and the healers like myself and some other people, they have such a powerful intent to heal that it just kind of goes out into everybody. So congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
Yay, Patrick.
Yeah. Who else feels like they needed to say something?
I think Ruby does.
Okay. Oh, does Dusty Cross have her hand up?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
From my perspective, and where I am currently on my path, it's about owning your value. And I think his example was a good example of owning his value. He was presented with the wall of fear, but something in him was ready, recognize the energy signature, I call it, and he didn't match that energy signature. He wasn't vibrating at that signature any longer. So therefore, when he spoke to that energy signature, it responded. And I can say from personal experience, that energy signature will keep responding for a period of time, because I think some of my thoughts are being implanted into my mind. I understand the power of mind, and I hear what you're saying, but I do think they are outside little minions that place these little negative thoughts, and you're like, oh, where did that come from? That didn't come from me. And you just say no, because I think we're trying to inhabit new energy signatures. And part of the fear and the overwhelm is because it's all new. We've not experienced these levels of usness. I don't know how else to explain it, of having and truly owning your value. And like Patricia says, standing as a sovereign being. I think all of these experiences and traumas we've had has brought us to a point to where we're able to fine-tune energy signatures now. And so it's easy for us to recognize and go, whoop, nope, don't want that in my life anymore. I'm going to address that. Okay, great. Oh my God, this feels good. And I just think this is different levels of valuing yourself, or the allowing the God part, or your spark, or your soul to shine no matter what your circumstance is. I mean, I live in a great deal of pain. I accept that it's okay. I'm happy. So I'll just focus on being happy. And my body will do what my body's going to do. I mean, I hear you about a pain body. I must have a gigantor one, but I feel like I've made peace with it. And that's really all I wanted to say.
That's pretty beautiful. What kind of pain do you have? Physical pain or emotional pain?
A central nervous system, total burnout.
Okay.
Multiple surgeries, car accidents, and traumas. And
Wow.
So now I'm 63, and I'm learning a lot. I'm taking a course about owning my value and earning my worth. And I'm really fine-tuning my ability as an intuitive to recognize certain energy signatures and how they make me feel, and eliminating those, or addressing those energies head on, and creating a better environment inside and outside.
Well, that's pretty much what I teach. I was actually going to get to if I don't know if we're going to have time today or not, but I wanted to get to doing the judgment and denial release.
Okay.
Because that teaches you. I'm going to do it right now because I think there's some more questions. That teaches you the actual way you can take a judgment and release it. So you have the emotion release, and you find the words that is the snake. The judgments are like the snake. You find the words like "I'm not good enough," and you do a formal release on it with a breathing technique, and you visualize it going out, and then you give yourself replacements. And what this does is it's about doing a lot of repetitions of that, because we have a lot of judgments. Like you just said, I'm fine with my pain body. I'm fine with my pain, and that which is one belief or one judgment. And other people are conflicting with their pain, so they hate their body because, and maybe you're okay with it, but there's still whatever the pain is. The pain is a call to action, so you try to find out what is the cause, and if you release the snake, sometimes it releases the bite, and that's probably what we're going to talk about next. But Dusty had her hand up. She wanted to say something.
I just wanted to say that with my body, like my emotional body, and my connection to my pain, because I've spent like almost the last 2 years doing a bunch of shadow work and a bunch of emotional release work. And I kept holding on to the pain, and I do all these exercises and exercises and exercises. And then like a few weeks ago or a month ago, like I was feeling this horrible pain, and I was feeling all these really low emotions. And then I'd have all this physical pain that went with it in my body. So like, stop it, stop it, stop it. Like, you don't need to be holding on to this anymore. And I feel more like my emotional body has released a bunch of pressure that was in it that I was holding on to. And I know that I still have stuff to work on, but
yeah,
I feel like it's more of a place of integration that I'm at now, and just letting my soul rest.
Beautiful.
Yeah, that's pretty.
Well, listen, here, I'm so glad you brought that up. Because you can here's the thing, if you do emotion release and emotion release and emotion release, in the beginning when you start doing it, you feel better, you feel empowered. But it may not get to the repeating patterns. So you do emotion release for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, and then you gradually go back to feeling bad in your pain body again. And then you do more emotion release and you're trying to get stronger, and then you go back. So what happens when you do just only exclusively emotion release work and that kind of stuff is you vibrate your what do you call it, your emotional body. You vibrate the energy, which is the snake bite. You get rid of the snake bite for a few days, but if you're not getting rid of the snake, then the snake bites you again. And then so you can do emotional release work over and over again. I'm working with a friend of mine now who's been doing emotional release work for 20 years, and she never did any judgment or denial release. She never got rid of the snakes, so her patterns kept going. And the only way she could deal with her patterns is to do emotional release. So she turns into kind of like this emotional release person, you know what I mean? And she never released the judgments and denials that keep the pattern. So the snake will bite you. If you have "I'm not good enough" and you don't address that, then you get rid of the vibration of "I'm not good enough," then sooner or later that snake's going to come back, and it's going to want to repeat the pattern, and it'll bite you again. And then that pain goes on, and it can go on for years and years that way. At the same time, you think that you're doing healing work, which you really are, but you're not completing the whole circuit. You have to get rid of the vibrational pain, and you get rid of the mind's maintaining of the pattern. And when you get rid of the mind maintaining the pattern and you get rid of the pain, it is gone. It is like it never happened. Imagine changing the tire on your car. It's flat tire, it's a big bother. But once you change the tire, you forget about it. It's like it never happened. You drive your car perfectly normal, and you forget 3 or 4 days, you forget that you even had a flat tire. You see what I'm saying? It's gone. And that's what you want. That's what judgment and denial release is all about. And denial release is exactly the same thing as judgment release, but you're telling your healing body that you don't want denial in your life. And denial is everything that's going on in your subconscious. And that means all the judgments and beliefs that are snakes make you feel pain, feel your body, feel all this kind of stuff. If you can't have access to it, because like when I was walking around with my bad self-image, I kind of knew I had a bad self-image, right? But it was kind of a fog. It wasn't clear. I didn't walk around saying, "Oh, I've got a bad self-image." I would just always be saying, "Well, that person's better than me," or "I could never do that," or you see what I'm saying? Because it was in my subconscious, and that's what denial is. I was denying that I had a bad self-image, and I tried to act like manly or whatever. So you do the denial release and the judgment release over the same process, and the replacements are, for denial, you don't want denial in your life, and the judgment gets rid of the judgment itself. And remember what I said, we get wounded automatically, subconsciously, non-verbally, and invisibly. So the judgment, the emotion release brings it all up into your 3D present consciousness awareness. Your mom did this, dad did that, my sister did that, whatever it was. That brings it into your consciousness. So then you have the visual and the auditory thing going, and you're feeling it. So it's conscious. Okay. And then after you vibrate that and you take away the pain from that and you remember the pain from that, then you can plug in the judgment. It's not true that you're not good enough. It's not true that life's not worth living. It's not true. You see what I'm saying? And you release that. You actually see the image of that person who was abusing you go out. And then you bring that out, that energy of that one being, you bring in 6 replacements. I am good enough. I'm good at all kinds of ways. I'm good at all kinds of things. You see how that works?
Yes, it's replacing the looping with different beliefs too.
Yeah, to change the pattern of the thoughts, and it'll change the maintenance of the energy. If the thoughts are empowering me, I'm a wonderful person, I'm a loving person. Now, if you say I'm a loving person, I'm a powerful person, but you're not dealing with the snake bite, then guess what? So you say, oh, then it's the snake bite comes back, right? But so you have to do both. You have to do the snake bite, which is the emotion release, and the judgment release. And then it's gone.
And I agree. I think that's why when we don't address all aspects, that's when this is my biggest frustration with the concept of healing, is that we get addicted to healing instead of living. And so we don't allow ourselves to really go through these healing processes. So we're in a constant state. I mean, I've would be guilty of this myself. I haven't necessarily gone through the processes all throughout my life. I've buried it, but you just see, where to me, vibration and energy and communication, these are healing frequencies. This is what it's about. It's all through vibration. It's through communication and through feeling and expression. That's to me the true healing modality, if you want to call it a modality, in the being and the healing. And it's not these looped states that we stay in through our brain and through our mind, where we're addicted to the attention we get, because we get attention by going to someone for the healing. We get addicted to the connection of it to another human being because it's fulfilling a loneliness in us, and we're not really addressing what's causing the loneliness. So I feel like what Michael's sharing is so important. Like, you have to address all aspects to actually allow the integration and the healing to take place.
And it's thought and feelings. If you think of thought as the man, the masculine, the input, and the feeling is the woman. And this is the natural man. This is the man not getting along with the woman, or the man maintaining the woman's subservience, right? The man poking the woman, the man not seeing the woman, man not valuing the woman. And so in our subconscious, you have the thoughts that are replaying the abuse to the emotional side. And this is why you don't have a natural man and a natural woman, is because the man treats the woman like shit, and the woman's pissed off at the man. And this is what goes on inside of us, and then it's what goes on outside of us, and what goes on between the rich and the poor and all that kind of stuff. It's all the same. It's all variations of the same pattern. So, and this stuff is deadly. Was it Ruby that said that she has like this a lot of pain in her body? Here's what I think we should do, if you want, is as I'll show you some judgments. I'll show you some judgments that have I've looked up, I've worked with people that cause pain in the body. And I want to show you what judgments look like so that you can kind of feel them. You know what I mean? So here's just a list of judgments I have. The first one is healing doesn't work, meaning emotional healing, right? Or my illness is a punishment for God. When you look inside, and some people have that, they get hurt and they think it's a punishment from God, and that's going to be really hard. That gets into your body. I have to suppress my feelings of anger, or I have to hold back all my feelings. And if you hold back all your feelings, and that vibration still is in your body, it goes somewhere and it goes into making your body sick. My feelings are ugly, and my feelings make me ugly. Yeah, it's my job to be hurt. A lot of people feel that it's my job to be hurt, and that your body thinks that that's what you're supposed to do, and you become hurt. And then other people have the other thing, says my illness helps me be more strong and heroic. And if you think that having emotional pain or physical pain is some kind of a heroic journey, then that's kind of like a pretty toxic thing to have in there. Other people identify with their illness. So my illness is who I am. The only time they ever got love, or the only time they were ever recognized, is when they're ill. So they became an illness. They became their illness. You know, and I must deny my illness and keep going. My illness is against me. And each one of these things is the snakes that are biting you. And you may not have one of these, but you might have some of them. I can't trust anybody or myself. You know, Patricia had a little bit of that when she was going on her walks. You can't trust anybody if you can't trust yourself to be all right. I have to struggle to survive. This is stuff that goes on inside people's bodies. Great suffering is a proof of my spiritual power. And that the spiritual people get into that. They think that shadow work, or this suffering is you got to be suffer to know God, or suffer to be worthy, or something. It's ridiculous. I have to take on the suffering from others. A lot of the people who are empaths, who have this really, they get dissociated between their suffering and other people's suffering, and they think they have to take on the suffering of the world or whatever. I don't want to live in this world. This world is painful all the time. I deserve to suffer. It's my job to suffer. I mean, if you have that as a belief system and that pattern keeps you going, then that means you're always going to be on the lookout for reasons to make you suffer. All I'm allowed to feel is bad. If that's what you get as a child, you know, I always feel bad or sad. If that's what you get as a child, then that's going to take a wear and tear on your body if all you're allowed to feel is bad. God wants me to suffer. You know, when we're little, mom and dad is the first God. And if you think that they want you to suffer, and they're always talking about God, then you think that because you're suffering, God wants you to suffer. So that means it just kills any chance of a healing body. So you're just a suffering body. Okay. If I really release my emotions, it'll hurt people. And there you go. When you love people, you don't want to hurt them, right? So if you say what you feel, then it's going to hurt them. Somebody's going to be crushed, you know? And so you hold back. I can only get the love I need when I'm sick. I can't take care of myself as an adult. And these things here's one down here, like life is a struggle. I have to fight to survive. Whoops. Yeah, I hate people. I hate myself. I hate the world. Yeah. Does anybody have any ones like this they want to work on? And I think what we'll do is we'll practice a judgment and denial release, just so I can walk you through that process. Anybody got any votes on one that release?
Well, something that you didn't mention on that slide that you just put up, but I thought that it was really interesting because this ties into not being authentic. One of the things was I'm dependent on my parents or whoever, friends, family, what I couldn't see because it went too quickly. But you know, one of the things about being inauthentic and carrying pain in your body and that is really big is when we have a fear of loss or we are dependent on somebody, that's another thing that plays a huge role in not being honest. And when Patrick,
I can't take care of myself.
yeah, I can't take care of myself. So what's going to happen if I live in, let's say I have a roommate and I'm living with this roommate and I rely on that person to pay 50% of my bills, and all of a sudden I'm faced with, I can't even express who I am because I could be on the street tomorrow. Or the same could be for a kid with their parent, you know, even though they might be an adult, but they're living with their parent. Or a spouse, you know, you stay in a relationship because what happens if I leave this partner? I won't be able to take care of myself. There's a lot of that that's going on every day. And that's real life for a lot of people.
Or I can't leave my job, and I'm in an abusive relationship with my boss. He abuses me.
Well, so I think the dependency is probably the biggest thing. If I looked at what's going on inside of humanity, the dependence that we have on a job or a relationship with another individual are probably what I would see as the biggest factor in us not being authentic and us carrying a lot of pain and trauma, and the way that we are triggered and the way that we treat one another when we are harmful to each other.
I agree.
So I think that would be a good one.
Which one? Which one?
The dependency on others, like when you're saying let's practice and exercise, like
So let's do that one on I have to depend on others. Let's put it in, because it could be variations on it. Let's try to get it into a simple. What was the actual words of the feeling? I can't survive unless I'm dependent on others.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess it goes back. Maybe it goes back to not trusting yourself to take care of yourself.
Well, that's a different subject. That's a variation of it.
Okay.
I can't.
Well, you decide.
Well, no, I want to work with yours because you're the one who has to. Because it's something that was current with you. So,
well, it just came to me when I was thinking about, when I look at relationships in general with what everyone's sharing and what I see with the sessions that I do with people and even in my own experiences, I feel like most of us, what it comes down to, we have a dependency with our children or with our parents or with our partners or with our jobs. So it goes in all aspects of life. So how about somebody else input? Like, yeah, just someone else input what you think. I just feel like that one's really strong.
I like that, but I think he may be able to get to a root. You know, he said that's a variation of something, something, something.
Yeah.
So I would trust your judgment. I forgot his name. I'm sorry.
Michael. Yeah.
Michael. How can I forget that? That's my dad, my son, my grandson. But anyway, Michael, I trust your judgment to fill into this group and pick a root one for us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with that one, because this is not about trying to get to the roots of too much. It's about learning a process. A process is, and you can use that process. As you saw that list, I didn't even show you all this. That list goes down, and there's at least 100 of them on there. So let's do the one. I have to be dependent on other people. Just leave it at that. Real simple. So, and like Patricia was saying, that's a discomfort. Like you ran that scenario, that's a discomfort. So the first thing you do is you feel the discomfort, the discomfort of the denial. It's a denial because it's part of your operating system. And so the first thing you do is recognize. So recognize, accept, forgive, release, and replace. That's the steps. And how, if you do it naturally, it's going to become because you recognize, accept, forgive, release, and replace. Or to do it formally. And this is about doing a formal release because nobody wants to carry around this junk. So then you say, the first thing you say is, oh, you can't see it yet, Craig. I don't have it shared yet. Yeah, denial release. Can you see it now? Okay. First, you feel the discomfort of this denial, which is also the judgment, has caused in your life. And you say, yes, I recognize my denial that I have to be dependent on others to survive. then yes, I offer loving acceptance to this denial. Now we're going after the denials here. And then you say, yes, I forgive myself for believing in this denial for so long. Next, because I no longer need or want denial in my life, I now offer it loving release. And this is where the ritual comes in. So when you say this out loud, you say all this stuff out loud, you have a big lung full of breath, and you release. Let air out, right? And when you do that, you're actually, that's a which it's like your body releases it, and you can feel it go. If it's the right words and in the right situation for you, then you'll feel it go. And then you add the visualization of you seeing the energy, either a person walk out or the image of the energy walk out, and you see it leaving your space. So it's very important to have that visual, the biofeedback from your body with the exhale and the visualization of seeing that energy walk out. Then the last thing you do is say, yes, I'd now like to replace this denial with the new understandings that, and then you're going to see them walk back in. And you always use the opposite of what it is. So denial means you don't know. So the opposite of that is you want to know. I no longer need things hidden. Denial is not loving. I cannot love what is in denial. My light must be able to shine into what was denied. I no longer want my greatness denied. What is denied is part of me. Denial blocks my love. Denial is no longer helping me. I want nothing denied ever in my life. I will not be hurt by my denials anymore. That's the basic steps of what the denial release looks like and how it feels like. I have this in video form, so if you want to look it up later. But okay, now that's denial. And the reason why you do the denial release is because the denial release is for your healing body. Remember, you got a pain body and a healing body. So you strengthen your healing body to say, I don't want to find this. I don't want any more denial in my life. Now, who was it? Was talking about was it James who was talking about, he just realized that, he wanted to assert himself and say no. Well, that was his healing body, see? You want to strengthen your healing body. You don't want anything denied. You don't want anything hidden. You don't want any games run on. You don't have any patterns that you can't change. You don't want anything in your subconscious that's going to affect you. So that's a denial release is about strengthening your healing body. And then what actually works for releasing the judgments, which is what was written on that paper, was mostly judgments, is the judgment release, which sounds like the same thing. Is first you feel the discomfort, because if your whole life is stressed out because you have to depend on other people, then that could go on for years and years and years, and you don't have to carry that around. So you feel that discomfort that belief system that judgment has caused in your life. So you start it with, yes, I recognize my judgment that I have to be dependent on other people to survive. Then, yes, I offer loving acceptance to this judgment. Then a short pause. And yes, I'd like to forgive myself for believing in this judgment for so long, because, it's hurt you for a long time, it's held you back. Because I no longer want this judgment in my life, neither want this judgment in life, I now offer it a loving release, big exhale. And you see that judgment walk out. And just float away. And what we just went through is went from subconscious to conscious, from nonverbal to verbal, and from invisible to invisible. So this whole process right here reverses the way you got wounded. Okay, and then you do the replacement. Yes, I'd now like to replace this judgment with new understandings that now. And the first one is always the opposite. And the opposite is, I don't have to depend on people to survive. I can survive without depending on people. Anybody else has a replacement? What would be the opposite if I have to depend on people? I can survive just fine on my own. What's another one?
Wrong foot again.
I love myself enough to stand in my power.
There you go. And another one. Who has another one? We got to get a 6 now. We have what's 2 now or 3? Does anybody else have another judgment? A replacement.
I can earn my worth.
I can earn my worth. There you go.
Mm.
I will survive no matter what, whether I depend on people or not. See?
Mm-hmm.
And this, remember, the mind is it creates the pattern, maintains the pattern. So what you're doing is you release the teeth of the snake, and what you're doing is reinstalling a new pattern. I am strong enough. I can do it. I can pay my own way. I can be independent. I don't have to be dependent. You see? Now, you saw that list with dozens and dozens. When you do this dozens of times over different issues or in clusters, then your replacements become huge. For every judgment, you end up with you forgive yourself for every judgment. You recognize and you forgive, and then you release it. But then you replace it with 6 more, which strengthens the pattern of the new pattern. So you do your emotional release, you do the judgment and denial release, and then accumulate, and all this goes into your healing body, and it doesn't take that long. 6 months, 2 years, and you have none of those issues again. It's because you're basically rewriting your emotional body. You're rewriting your energy signature. You're rewriting the patterns of your brain. And that's the way it works. And it works really well. You want to do another one, or you want some feedback? Want to get feedback?
Well, does anyone have anything that they would like to share, or any questions they would like to ask? Because it's a great time, and I would love for you to participate. Okay, if you don't have anything to share, is there another one that you'd like to go over?
You want to go look at that list again? That list is on things that work with that have known to be cause suffering in your body or cause illness in the body. But there's another list for relationship. There's another list for money. There's another list for God's, all the God stuff. There's another list for sexuality and self-worth. See, that's just one list, and that's got 100 things on it. So here's the thing: is our patterns, even though they're simple, there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now you may not have 100 of them, but you might have 20, and each one will have a variation. Like for me, I'm not good enough, right? So I'm not a good enough father. I'm not a good enough husband. I'm not a good enough worker. I'm not a good enough employee or something. You see what I'm saying? That's a cluster of I'm not good enough. So they have variations of it, and you might get triggered in one thing or the other. But when you work on a cluster like that, like a cluster of grapes, once you pull the root one off, the rest of them go real easy, and then that issue is no longer a problem. I had a world-class bad self-image, and now I'm pretty much doing okay. I don't have that stuff in my head saying I'm not good enough and everybody's better than me.
Yeah. Anything that anyone wants to go over, or we can let I think, does anyone want to, you think relationships is a good one?
Yeah, any of them good. There is no man for me, or there is no woman for me.
All right, let's just do relationships.
Yeah, does anybody have a judgment about their relationships? Or love is painful? How about that one?
Carol's going to talk.
I make bad choices.
Yeah, okay. I make bad choices. And that means you leave the relationship implied. I make bad choices in relationships. Yeah. Or I make bad choices with men.
with men.
Yeah. Okay. Let's leave it. Let's do that. So we'll start off with the denial, because you probably weren't thinking about that before now.
No.
So that means it was in denial, right? If you have made bad choices, then that means if it's a repeating pattern for you, that means you have pain on one hand, and then you have the snake and the snake bite of this one. So you want to read that one? Can you read that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so say it out loud. First, I recognize the
Yes, I recognize my denial that I make bad choices in men.
right. Okay, the next.
Yes, I offer loving acceptance to this denial. Yes, I forgive myself for believing in denial for so long. That's really powerful, the believing in it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I no longer need or want denial in my life, I now offer it loving release.
Right. Big exhale, and then you try to imagine. You can either see it as a little ball of light or a little dark spot or a physical person walking out of your life.
That's right.
Did you get a little visual? That takes practice sometimes.
Yeah, I saw the face of one person and I saw the back of that person.
There you go. That's it. That's
at the same
excellent.
time.
That's excellent. You just saw your denial walk away. All right, so let's do the last one.
I guess it would have to be something about trusting my.
No, say it. Yes, I'd like. Yes, I would now like to replace this denial with the new understandings that. Okay. Yeah, read that part. What it says last.
Oh yes, I would like to replace this denial with the new understandings that.
List at least 6
I
reasons.
make excellent choices in men for myself.
Yeah, I want to know. Yeah, you want to know this because then you can deal with it. I no longer want things hidden. If this thing's been bothering you for 10 or 12 years, then you don't want that hidden anymore. You want to deal with it directly. Denial is not loving. So if you had this denial and that you make bad choices with the relationships, that's really hurt you for a long time. You denied your opportunities for love. So denial is not loving. Yeah.
Yes.
And I can't love what is in denial. So there's the you that is in denial that's asking for release, and you can't even go there because it's in denial. My light must be able to shine into what was denied. You want to know. Your inner child work. Inner child work is all about shining your light into the pain of the past. Yeah? So that's 3 or 4 of my. I no longer want my greatness denied. What is denied is part of me. Denial blocks my love. Denial is no longer helping me. You see what I'm saying? So all this is about, again, it's about strengthening your healing body. And the whole idea, if you want to heal, is you don't want denial. So here we are. It's hard enough being stuck in a pattern, much less having it all denied. So
Yeah.
they bring it out of the subconscious, and you want to see it in your face. And we were afraid to see it. We're afraid to look at our pain. So you build up the momentum of you don't want denial in your life, because it's denial. It's not the judgment that's what manifests in the world. It's the denial that manifests in the world.
Mm.
And the suppression. But for me, what went a lot further than that was the suppression of those feelings to begin with.
Oh yeah, that's the denial of the feelings.
Wrapped up in the denial. Yeah.
Yeah, the denial seems to be like that. When you were saying that, when I was listening, the denial is what is like. The denial is like the motive behind self-sabotage, or like the perpetrator.
That's right, because you don't see it coming.
Yeah.
It's the snake in the grass you don't see coming. So now that you've got it all up in your face and you saw that little being leave and everything, now you work on the judgment itself, the actual words. And you start off with, Go ahead and read this one. Yes, I feel this judgment has caused in my life, because it's a judgment, and the judgment is what causes the cycles to go on and on and on. It's the words that you say to yourself.
Yes, I recognize my judgment that
I make bad choices in relationships.
I make bad choices in my loving relationships.
Right.
Yes, I offer loving acceptance to this judgment. Yes, I forgive myself for believing in judgment for so long. Because I no longer need or want this judgment in my life, I now offer it loving release.
Big exhale. See if you can see it go out. Even if it's the same thing, let it go out.
Yeah. It's almost as if where the judgment was created, that's the vision that I got.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. You're bringing up something from the past, and it's not coming into your visual screen. Okay, and the last one?
Many years ago. Yes, I would now like to replace this judgment with the new understandings that I make excellent choices in my loving relationships with men.
Yeah. I have a lot of good relationships with men. You want to say the opposite of what the effect was.
Yeah. I do as friends, but not in relationships, close relationships. Or I should say romantic, or however you want to call it.
I'm more than able to handle any kind of romantic relationships. Now you want to give yourself power. Yeah, you want to give yourself possibilities. Are you feeling stuck? Try to give yourself some more. Give yourself some 6 things that are the opposite or empowering besides being stuck.
Okay. I'm perfectly capable of having a great relationship with a man.
Yeah, that's a good one. I can make good choices with a man.
I can make.
What's that, like 4? There's all about. I think that's 4 now or 5.
Mm-hmm. I think as you start giving yourself the judgments, the mind almost starts going a little bit deeper to where that came from.
Yeah, that's exactly what exactly what this process does. When you get into digging into the one that you can catch, it'll take you to a deeper one.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah,
it'll take you to a more meaningful one, and that's why you want to learn this process. It's a pretty simple process, and it only takes a couple of days or something to memorize the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can actually catch it on the fly, and you can catch when you do the denial release. It'll bring things up to your consciousness. Like maybe you'll be triggered by somebody's judgment or something. It brings it up to your consciousness, and you go, "Oh, that's a judgment," and then you can immediately do a judgment or a denial release on that on the fly. And that's really powerful.
Mm. Something that came to me when she was sharing is that I'm worthy of being in a loving relationship with a man.
There you go. That's a great replacement. Great replacement. I'm worthy. I am allowed.
Yeah.
Because it may have been that you're not allowed, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough. Mm-hmm. Some women have that there is no good man for me. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So part of it could be that if that's the judgment, then that's another one. If you think there's no good man for you out there, then that just kind of puts a lid on all the possibilities. So
and reverse.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying in reverse. If the same thing would apply with a man in the situation when it comes to a woman.
Same. Yeah. We're talking about the patterns of thought that limit our behavior or that instigate our behavior.
Here's one. I have one now. I trust myself to attract.
Yeah.
good relationships, good, healthy relationships.
Great one. That's a great
Mhm.
replacement. Now, see, the idea is, remember, that's how it works. Is you have your pain body, and then you have this, which is the snake bite, the pain, ow, and then you have the snake, right? So what we did is we pulled the teeth of the snake, and now we're getting that snake into like a nice, friendly dog that's going to look out for you. And that's what these things are. They're the protection, the possibilities, the inclusiveness. You know, I'm beyond petty problems or whatever. You become more inclusive and stronger, more supple, more possibilities. Because what happens with judgments and denials is they're exclusive. You know, if you have I make bad decisions in relationships, that's an exclusive thing. It's not true. You qualified it as romantic relationships, but you can have a wonderful romantic relationship with your heart. You can have it with your God. You can have it with your with your soul, and be amazing. You know what I mean? So you want
Can I add one more thing?
Sure.
For me, in my experience, since she's talking about relationship with the opposite sex, I find for me because I had sexual abuse, that I thought what I wanted was touch or hug or holding hands or something like that. But I came to realize what I'm looking for is connection. That's important. And then I can have that with male, female, little people, little children. But connection is what feeds. Yeah, connection is what I'm looking for. I've just been disconnected from my connection. If that makes sense.
So there you go. You just found a beautiful judgment. I feel disconnected from my connection to people. That's a judgment. And that's also a denial, because 5 minutes ago you didn't have that, right? So it was in denial. But then we're talking about this, which brings it up out of your subconscious into your conscious, and now you can do that. You want to do that one?
Well, for me, it was putting other people before myself.
Yeah.
That was when all of this started. That was the main training I had received as a child, and as a put others before you.
Yeah.
Put me before you. Always.
And that's a terrible judgment, because that means no matter what, that means you're always kind of in the negative of taking care of yourself, and you have to take care of other people first. And another correlation of that, another variation of that, is I'm not worth love. So the only way I can get love is by serving other people and earning my love. I have to earn my love, because I'm not worth love. See, these things screw the pooch, man. And then, you don't even know they're there. They're operating in the background. And then the patterns repeat about serving your children. This is what happens to a lot of women who think that they have to earn their love by serving others. And then their husband leaves them, and their kids are grown up, and then they're like, holy crap, my whole world fell apart, because they've been living by serving other people, and all of a sudden all the people are gone. Then what do they got? Then they got to do their recovery work and find a new life. Some want to kill themselves.
Yeah, well, and that's like the martyr syndrome. But then I see the way that works for men, where because they haven't connected to the emotional aspect, for them it comes out differently. So for them, their pain and their suffering and their disconnect and where they martyr themselves is feeling like they have to be this financial provider. And so they carry on this huge burden of having to provide financially, and they feel kind of trapped and enslaved in a different way, and martyring themselves in a different way, to where that can breed disconnection and resentment and anger too. So, I mean, it's a lot of things that are happening on both sides, and it's creating this division for us in those relationships. So the same way where we as women are connecting to that part, and we have that awareness, then men are feeling so isolated because they can't share their emotions. They're not allowed to cry. They're not allowed to feel. And they've just been made to feel like they're just like a money generating machine, and that's all they have to contribute. So, there's empathy for that too.
Or you're exactly right. Or take a man, right? And the only time he ever got love was from his father and his mother, was when he was doing independent an independent behavior, and he's a little independent kid, and he got praised for being independent. Then he ends up marrying a woman who was completely dependent on connection and relationships, and that she got all her love by being connected and petted and talked to by her mother, and there was this big connection going on. So here he's thinking that the model for love for him is to be independent and aloof, you know, and the model for her of love is to be, you know, like touchy feely and talky and all. And it's like you got these two different judgments, two different denial systems going on there. And it's like they realize, well, wait a minute, we don't even have, you know, and she says, oh, he never talks to me, and he's always off doing his work, and he's always, you know, never, you see how that works? Mm-hmm. So you have you think of as the natural man and the natural woman, and they are miles apart, and what keeps them apart is the judgments and denials that are operating in their subconscious. Her judgments and her denials about what love is and what the house is, what a relationship is, and his, yeah. So the idea for spirituality and going into 5D is to have none, zero, zip. The more you get rid of, the higher you go. The more sensitive you are to the universe, to nature, to Mother Nature, to your nature. The less pain you have, and the more energy you have, the higher your consciousness. And that's where we're going. So healing. Anybody want to write this thing down on their chalkboard? Healing and evolution is the same thing. What you heal, you evolve. And that's where we're going. We're not going to be able to take all this judgments and denials and pain with us into 5D. It doesn't work that way. You got to do your work here on earth in your body. It doesn't work that way to go to heaven and die and go to heaven and come back. Well, that's what karma is. All the judgments that we've got from our grandmothers and fathers and history and, you know, like war and suffering and spare the rod and beat the child, whatever those things are that's been handed down for generations, that comes with us lifetime after lifetime. The only time you can clear it up is alive in this lifetime. Yeah. People, you can talk to people all the time that have traumas of being burned as a witch, or they have traumas of being died as a war, traumas of being abandoned, traumas of being families killed by Indians. You see, all this stuff from the past gets carried over into our pain body, and the mind, which remember from Dr. Bruce, we are energy bodies, we are energy beings, and we have to heal ourselves on the energetically level in 5D.
Yeah. Well, I just really want to thank you for taking the time to share with us. I've said this so many times in the sessions that I do. I say it in all the interviews that I do. I think across the board, I think I'm just stuck on this because I feel like it's so important. You're the group that you've created, Language Lessons of the Heart. Language, communication, the word, the logos, the word the spirit became flesh and dwelt among us. That's us. We spoke creation into being. We are creating with our language. We create in our energy. Everything that we do, our intentions, everything is created through our thoughts, our hearts, and our expression. And so to me, the most healing thing we can do is communicate. And that is just what I find to be true. And to me, this is the most helpful thing that we can offer to humanity in our healing process. And what's the next level to that? That's the authenticity part. That is being honest and saying the things that are uncomfortable, to put yourself in a situation to where you're public. Like for Paul, it's not comfortable. For Dusty, it's not comfortable. For Maya, it's not comfortable. For me, it's not comfortable. I mean, every time, and I've said this before, anytime that I'm going to do one of these events, I always want to back out. I'm always at the, just like, is there any reason that I can not do this? Because I have the same thing, this anxiety about being in public, but at the same time, I know that it's what my greater being wants for me. This is part of me becoming vulnerable and part of my healing process and part of me integrating all of my experiences to remember who I am and to be this whole healthy person. And also to remember, this is something that's really important, is to not be looking for justice in this world, okay? We don't need justice. That is just revenge. We don't need to blame anyone. We don't need to set ourselves up as a victim of another. We just need to own our journey and do what's necessary for us to get back to that remembrance of who we are. And I wanted to share this with you, Michael, something that, you know, I really took to heart what you were sharing about, you know, the things that you wanted us to say to ourselves, like I'm an infinite and immortal, what was never created, and I'm empowering myself with a strong and loving intent to heal my will. And so what really came through to me because of the healing work that I have done, and I thought when you're in that in the process and you still do not know how amazing you are and how much of a creator being you are, then you have to be in that mindset of needing that healing. And I thought, now when you get to the point to where you can say, I'm empowering myself with a strong and loving intent to live my will in grace and gratitude, you see, you're no longer having to heal your will, but you are living your will in grace and gratitude. That's what we're really striving to be in that place of not feeling that there's anything to heal, but that we are actually living our will with intention.
Well, what I teach is that once you get to the point of healing your will, at some point your will takes over and heals you, and that's what you want to get for. That's why you do the empowerments. That's why you do all this work and emotional release work. At some point, it gets into your subconscious, and your subconscious heals you, and then you're pretty much back in factory specs, the way you always think you should be. You're always you, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much for this wonderful talk, and I thank everybody for listening to me.
Yeah. No, I think what you're doing, Michael, is amazing. I think your work, I mean, I think that this is very empowering and very helpful to people. And, you know, I just want you to know that since our last meeting, I've had a lot of private messages where people have been putting your empowering words into use, and they're seeing a difference in their life. They really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's the core of all modalities. You're going to heal. You'll heal naturally if you do nothing. But this just happens to be the plot line. This happens to be the sort of like the recipe for the way all healing works. It has to go through these steps.
Yeah.
But you can do it. Some people can do it through dance. Some people can do it through music. Some people can do it through creativity. And, you know, it's still going to go through the same steps.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So is there anything that anyone else would like to say before we close? If not, I mean, I just want to say thank you so much. I really do appreciate this. And I hope to do this again in the future because I feel like there's always something new that we can learn from one another, from what we take away from this experience coming back together again. I think, Paul, you wanted to say something?
You're mute, Paul.
Yes, I will. Yes, just thank you, Michael. And I have a lot to think about in a different way than before, and so I can use some of this. I'm going to listen to this program again and to put some of this into practice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me as well. Thank you, Michael. That was very helpful. Just that little thing that you had me do. I'm gonna go through a list and go through it, do it one by one.
Well, I'm pleased. Listen, I have like 50 videos on my YouTube channel. I have a group for some support. Peter John Graham's in my group. He's a moderator and doing a great job. So there is support and there is more information. And remember this thing about information is not enough. You have to have process. So today we got a lot of information, a lot of good information, a lot of sharing. But we also learned some processes. And if you want to learn more how to do it, it is available. Yeah.
And I was just going to say thank you for allowing everyone to share the way you did. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's good. I'm with you. Sharing's a big deal.
Okay, anyone else?
Just a big thank you to everybody.
And Maya? Thank you. Maya, did you want to say something?
Just also thank you just for the fact of sharing. I mean, we are in such a beautiful time of synchronicity. I also remember when I was months ago, I think when you did the last video, I was like really, I'm taking back my will. I mean, I was in this process, and then I listened to your beautiful, it's a beautiful phrase you were praising the will. I can't even remember it right now, but it's very beautiful. I mean, I just want to give thank you for all the beautiful synchronicity, sharing. Because, I mean, as one heals, the other heals. It goes out into the field. I just want, I'm in deep gratitude of all of us coming together in the quantum field in one way or the other. Thank you, beautifuls, for sharing.
We really are one. That's beautiful. We really are one. There really is a unity out there.
Yeah. You can feel it like stronger every day. Even, I mean, there are days where, you know, you feel like, oh, you're doing that shit again. I mean, but then there is this stopping this judging, and you know, it's coming, like we're coming into a more state of serenity and observing, and I mean, it's a beautiful time of healing right now.
You see what Maya Rose is doing? She's speaking from her healing body.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to throw that in there, but she's speaking from, you know, oh, life is beautiful, you know, and I've had trouble in the past and I'm overcoming it. That's her healing body.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not like I'm stuck in bad relationships all my life. No, that's one polarity. The other polarity is, yeah, I'm healing and things are changing, things are getting better, and I can do it. You know what I mean? That's the healing body.
Yeah.
So I love to hear from the healing body. You know? Yeah.
I don't know if we have time, but if it's still time, I would love to share a song and we all hold together some beautiful.
Well, we're like it's almost 3 hours now. We're over 3 hours now.
Well, I don't mind if you want to. I don't mind if you sing a song if you want, and if anybody wants to leave, they can leave, and I'll let you go ahead and sing your song. And yeah,
just like to close beautiful and hold like the intention for all our healing.
Yeah, and thank everyone for coming. And if anyone wants to leave, thank you so much. And I'm just going to let Maya close with her song. Thank you all so much.
Love you so much, everybody, and the best wishes for everybody. Yeah. Much love to everybody.
Thank you. Much love to you too.
I see you, Amanda. See you, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Beautiful beings.
Yeah, thank you.